What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Strength Coach Rants. I'm your host, Connor Lyons, and today we're going to talk about how Carl Lewis is responsible for your mediocre gym gains.
I don't want to hear you, 'cause you cannot master the strength.
All right, so not a lot of people are aware of this, but a long time ago here in the United States of America, it was perfectly legal to both have and use steroids. You go back to the initial bodybuilding explosion, right? Arnold Schwarzenegger, Lou Ferrigno, all those guys. You could go buy steroids and use them, and there's no real taboo. And it was perfectly legal. You wouldn't get arrested or anything like that. That all changed in 1990 when George H.W. Bush, so the first Bush, signed the Anabolic Steroid Control Act of 1990, which was passed by the 101st Congress, again in 1990. The debate for that bill had started, and it had been written in 1989, but it was finally passed on April 26th, if I'm not mistaken, of 1990. Now, this bill did three things, or this act, rather, did three things. It established penalties for physical trainers or advisors who endeavor to persuade or induce individuals to possess or use anabolic steroids. So it made it like illegal for you as a strength and conditioning coach or a personal trainer to say, hey, here's some steroids, you should take them. It'll make you stronger and it'll kind of accelerate all the gains that we're trying to make. The second thing it did was it added anabolic steroids to become a Schedule III drug, right? So it kind of changed it from being completely legal to being a Schedule III drug. And I think Schedule III means that there's some like medical uses for it, but you're not allowed to take them if you're not prescribed by like a physician. And it defined, the third thing it did was it defined anabolic steroid as any drug or hormonal substance that promotes muscle growth in a manner pharmacologically similar to testosterone, including, and then there was like a list of substances. So these things were named, like probably your stanozolol and your dianabol and those things. And then also anything that acted like testosterone would be considered illegal in a Schedule III drug in this case. It essentially made non-medical use of steroids a criminal act, right? So bodybuilders could no longer freely use the steroids. I think if you go back to Pumping Iron, like way back in the day, there's video in that movie, I don't know if maybe it's been scrubbed, of Arnold Schwarzenegger eating Dianabol like Tic Tacs, just out in the open, nobody cared. So what prompted the 101st Congress, along with George H.W. Bush, to pass this act? Well, it was something that happened about 579 days earlier at the 1988 Seoul, Korea. I don't know if it was North and South back then. Olympic Games, where a man by the name of Ben Johnson beat the American favorite named Carl Lewis. This was September 24th of 1988, where they used to do the Olympics a little bit later. It would bleed into October at times, which is weird because technically that's not the summer anymore. That's actually, it becomes the fall, September something, or September, October. I don't know, maybe that is still summer. I don't know. It might be summer. So anyways, to totally get back on track, because that was a stupid tangent, Ben Johnson was really the heavy favorite going into this. He was younger than Lewis. He had beaten him at many of the world championships going into the Olympics. He was really favored to be the better runner. But if I'm not mistaken, Lewis at a world championships had beaten his time before the Olympics. And so I remember Ben Johnson saying there's a lot of pressure on Carl Lewis to come back and do it again, even though Johnson really had his number 99% of the time. I'm going to pull up the video of that race here because Johnson smoked him. I'll fast forward a little bit.
That he has away from him. Let's see his reaction now.
That's him there.
Can't break.
Is he third from the bottom if you're watching? The guy who's clearly pulling away. And as you can see, that wasn't even close. Ben Johnson smoked him. The actual times were Lewis was at a 9.92 in second place, and Johnson ran a 9.79. So he beat him by like 0.13 seconds. And while that doesn't sound like a lot, and 100 meters, that's like light years faster. He actually beat his own world record in that case. Johnson did, running that 7.9 or 7.97 be pretty good. 9.79. Following the race, all these athletes get tested for performance enhancers, and Ben ended up testing positive for stenozolol, which is better known by most gym rats as a Winstrol, right? So anabolic agent that's used. It's commonly used. It's like a cutting steroid for many gym rats. It's not really popular with athletes because there's just no real it's not highly androgenic, so you're not going to get a lot of the effects that you want as an athlete. It can, however, make you look better. So if you're, a gym rat or you're getting ready for the summer to go to the beach and all that, Winstrol is a popular drug for that. It comes both orally and in injectable form. So actually, to go back to what I was just saying, it's kind of funny because Winstrol would not be a drug that you would choose to use if you were an athlete. The anabolic androgenic ratio is just not conducive with the adaptations that you want as a sprinter. And Ben Johnson would have known this, and more importantly, his strength and conditioning coach, Charlie Francis, would have known this as well. There'd be no real benefit to taking this drug, and then on top of that, having it in his system going into the race is kind of wild. But to drive that home, so if you look at these are a couple androgenic anabolic kind of profiles of some of the more popular steroids. So Winstrol, the anabolic is 320, and the androgenic would be 30, right? So the androgen side of things aren't very high. Dianabol, which is another, I mentioned it, Arnold Schwarzenegger taking it back in the day. It's a lot more androgenic at 60 while having an anabolic profile about 210. Tren, which is like the gold standard for all the gym rat morons who don't really understand it, has an anabolic profile of 500. All right, well, it has also a 500 androgenic, right? So androgenic stems from the word androgen. It's going to act a lot more like a testosterone would and give you a lot more of like the strength benefits, and some of the size benefits come a little bit more from the anabolic. But the androgenic side effects is really kind of, you want that if you're an athlete. And then just one more drug, DECA, which is another popular gym rat kind of drug here, which Tren is like a derivative of. It's a nandrolone derivative, just like DECA. The anabolic in DECA, the profile is 125, while the androgenic would be 37. Right, so you can see out of all those drugs, Winstrol has the worst androgenic properties. It would not be something that you would want to take as an athlete. It wouldn't be super beneficial to you unless you were just trying to go to the beach and look good. Like I said, Charlie would have known this, Ben would have known this, and they damn sure would have known to have everything out of his system before the race, before they knew that they would be drug tested when he inevitably won the race. On top of it not being a super beneficial drug for him to use, he also, apparently in the amounts that he tested positive for, more than likely would have had to have taken the drug that day, which again, moronic, knowing what was going to be happening that day, knowing damn well he was going to be getting drug tested. And unless Ben and Charlie are both morons, this just isn't something that would have happened, right? It would have still been, anything that he would have taken would have been well out of his system by the time they got to Seoul, because they knew they would be tested. And so what's odd here, right, is both Charlie and Ben testified in I think it was in 89, the year after, in the what was called the Dubin inquiry, that Ben had been using steroids since 1981, but that Winstrol was never a drug that he chose to use, again, because it's just not beneficial to him as a sprinter. But Charlie had been in charge of this drug regimen for the past 8 years, and he had always tested clean. He, like most athletes back then, and a lot of them today, use and are able to beat these tests. It's not all that uncommon. You'd be surprised how many of these athletes that clutch their pearls when dragged on Capitol Hill about how awful the cheating is. You'd be surprised how many of them have some improprieties when it comes to their training regimens getting ready for the season. So while there's undoubtedly 100% some metabolites of that stenozolol or Winstrol in Ben Johnson's sample, there were apparently some chain of custody issues that didn't come to light until decades later. For one, there were some unsigned and handwritten revisions on the paperwork. There were some unexplained deletions in the paperwork. There were blank urine tests that were part of the process. There were some changed lab codes in the paperwork. And apparently very early on, there was actually some confusion as to what Johnson tested positive for within the IOC Medical Commission, right? Which is weird, right? But none of that, and we'll go over this a little bit later, none of that came to light until 30 years down the road when they unsealed these documents, which is weird. You know, it's kind of like the whole Pfizer saying, oh, we'll release the COVID jab info 75 years from now, right? You'll be able to find out about it then. It's just weird. You got to think if they're not going to release these things, there's something that they're trying to hide within them, right? So how did he test positive if he wasn't somebody who was taking this drug? Well, Ben Johnson swears that his beer was spiked when he was in the doping control and testing room. Now, after you play your sport or you run your event or whatever it happens to be at the Olympics, you're going to go into this doping control room and they're going to watch you and you're going to have to give a sample. You're going to have to pee in a cup. And then they're able to test that sample. Well, Ben Johnson was too dehydrated to pass the sample at the time, so he was given a lot of these guys drink beer after. I guess you work really hard, and then that's like a little reward for you. But he swears that his beer was spiked by a man named Andre Jackson, right? So within this room, you're only supposed to be there if you're supposed to be there. So that's coaches. The actual athlete gets to bring one person back with him. That can be a coach. That can be a friend. In Ben Johnson's case, it was a massage therapist because he wanted his legs rubbed because they were sore from running 100 meters. But that's what he wanted. So he's sitting there drinking his beer, getting his legs rubbed. Well, this guy, Andre Jackson, was in the room with him for some reason, and nobody knows what that reason is. He was the man who handed Ben Johnson the beer already opened that Ben Johnson drank. Now, Andre Jackson wasn't running, he wasn't competing in the games, or he wasn't running in that event. He may have been competing, but he wasn't running in that event. He was, however, Carl Lewis's roommate in the Olympic Village. He was a member of the American track and field team, and he had been there this whole time with Lewis and somehow managed to find his way into the doping control room, which is kind of wild when you think about it. See, where are we? So he's roommates. So again, Johnson claims that this Andre guy spiked his beer, which to me, and to be completely honest, I don't think that the timetable of that's quite right. I don't know that you're going to drink a beer and then that's going to get processed by your body in a fast enough time for you to be able to, pass it through your urine. But that's what Johnson thinks happened. Now, Jackson, the American, may have been sent there by the USA track and field coach. He is on record, his name was Joe Douglas, he's on record as saying that he wanted to make sure that Johnson wasn't going to be doing anything to cheat the test. So he sent, and again, this gets a little weird here, he sent Jackson in there to take photos of anything that kind of happened out of the ordinary. Now, another thing, you're not allowed to take photos back there, but there are photos of Andre Jackson and Ben Johnson in the room together. Jackson said he wanted a photo, and he got a photo. I guess the rules don't matter sometimes, but not supposed to be in there. You're not supposed to take photos, and this guy, Andre Jackson, did both. But so the USA track and field coach, Joe Douglas, says he doesn't really remember if he sent him in there or if he was supposed to be in there. He had just asked him to take photos if anything seemed unscrupulous, right? But he said he can't remember because he had a car accident a few years back, and it's like affected his memory. And then conveniently, the records of the visitor logs to that room were destroyed per the protocol of the IOC, right? So this is all very weird. The IOC commission withheld these. So that's the story. Ben Johnson swears it was spiked. Andre Jackson was there. He wasn't supposed to be there. Handed him a beer that was unopened. I guess we'll never know. Again, to me, that timetable just doesn't really add up. It seems not nearly long enough for that drug to get into his system and then be past his urine for this sample. But who knows, right? I don't. So the IOC Medical Commission sealed these records for 30 years, right? It was 1988. They didn't get released until 2018, 2019. They were sealed, and they were never shown to Canada's chief medical officer, whose name was William Stanish, even after he requested it. And from what I understand, Ben Johnson's under the impression that they did not want Johnson to be able to see them with Charlie around, Charlie Francis, his track coach, because Charlie would have been able to see that something was up, and they never showed them to the medical officer for Canada. They just showed them to Ben, and Ben doesn't know all that. He's an athlete. He's not going to know any of this stuff. And then following that, it was sealed. It makes sense to me that you wouldn't want Charlie to see that. Charlie's a genius. Won't get super far into him today, but he's published a few books that I still reference to this day. One of his quotes, it doesn't matter how many times you can repeat an effort if the output isn't high enough to begin with, is like a motto that I program and coach and live by. Very smart guy, would have been able to tell something's up. And the Canadian medical team was essentially kind of forced to take the IOC Medical Commission's word and move on, and that's what they did. There's no real recourse back then, other than that Dubin report or Dubin inquiry, where Ben Johnson, Charlie Francis were paraded up to Capitol Hill up in Ottawa to have a hearing in front of Canadian lawmakers for reasons. So how did this lead to the 1990 Steroid Control Act? Well, Carl Lewis went on a national tour of how disgusted he was by the cheating from Ben Johnson, and he was only able to win because he had cheated. Meanwhile, Ben Johnson has his number and is absolutely crushing him just about every time they come up. But it was the cheating, it was the win stroll that wouldn't help him be a better athlete. That is the only reason that Carl Lewis did not win the gold medal in the 1988 games, which he ended up winning because they stripped the title of Ben Johnson due to his positive tests and everything. And in response to this, right, never let a good opportunity to have some camera time go to waste. Our Congress decided to parade Olympic athletes up onto Capitol Hill and speak with them and pick their brains and come up with some kind of bill to pass a law and make criminal what used to not be criminal, all because Carl Lewis got beat by Ben Johnson in the 100-meter dash. The funny thing about this is during training, Carl Lewis had tested positive for banned substances 3 times. So he tested positive for 3 times, but it was seen as a quote-unquote inadvertent use, right? So he was taking a supplement that had been spiked with something. He didn't have any idea. And so the USOC was just like, all right, we'll just stop taking that supplement. We can go on. Meanwhile, it happened 3 times. I know at least one of them was like a decongestant. It was like a ephedrine, which which is like a stimulant, which would absolutely help you run better. But that didn't matter to Carl Lewis. It was the win stroll that made Ben Johnson beat him. Weird, man. So what did Congress do in response to that? Right, paraded him up there and decided to pass a law that made steroid users criminals, right? And strength and conditioning coaches, who I believe the field had been started by them, it was back in the 70s. Strength and conditioning coaches, athletic trainers, doctors, all become criminals if they are, trying to get their athletes to take these drugs. Weird that Congress would act in this instance and not others, right? I didn't even know about this, but in 1963 you had the steroid gate, which was in football, where the Chargers, I don't know if they were in San Diego back then, but wherever they were, the Chargers forced their athletes to take steroids during training camp. You also had the 1970s and 80s German government forcing of their athletes to take steroids, which you would have seen as, probably unfair as well. Back when East Germany was just absolutely dominating and destroying everybody before that. The bodybuilding explosion in the 70s and 80s. And the baseball's greenie issues, which was an amphetamine that baseball players were taking to be able to get through double headers, and the fact that baseball is like 9,000 games long in a season. I forget who it was that they had lost a double header in an interview, he said, "We didn't get outplayed. We just got out milligrammed." It was a very open secret within baseball that they were taking amphetamines to be able to get through the season. Congress did not care about any of that. They cared that Carl Lewis had lost to Ben Johnson, and the American needed to win, so Congress was going to make criminals of people who otherwise wouldn't be criminals. Wild. So what this did was this created a new drug in the war on drugs where, they could say these people, Congress could say these people are supposed to be role models for your children and they're out there cheating. What is that? What does that show them? They're making criminals out of these athletes. And they even had an after school special, which I'm going to show you a couple clips of here with Ben Affleck. The title of it was, what was it called? A Body to Die For. It's a true story of a guy named Aaron something who blamed his depression and kidney issues and heart issues on his steroid use in high school trying to make the high school football team. But it's about 3 minutes long. Here's a couple scenes from it. We'll go over it at the end of it, but it's like every single thing that they warn you of drugs, they did this with the steroids here. So.
Look, Henry, you got a lot of heart. You're a leader. The other kids look up to you. And that's why I'm going to have to ask you to give me more.
Okay.
Coach is asking him to do more.
Oh, you gotta relax.
Asking his gym buddy for steroids
I
here.
know, it's not happening fast enough. I gotta get stronger than this.
I can get you stronger, but it's gonna get expensive.
Fine, whatever. I don't care. I don't give a shit. Whatever it costs.
All right, I'll take care of you. I'll turn you into one of the big boys. Ooh.
So what do I do?
Each vial holds 1 cc, right? You break off the cap, you fill the syringe, press the plunger, make sure there's no air in the needle. Your upper buttock is best, alternate cheeks.
So that's it?
That's it, yeah. Pop yourself and you'll be feeling like Superman.
If you're listening and not watching, it's just showing Ben Affleck injecting himself with the steroids here.
My wallet's consistently light.
Talking to his mother here.
When I come from the bank.
So
Accusing him of stealing money.
Is that what you're saying? If that's what you're saying, just go ahead and say it.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just asking.
Well, I'm replying, okay? No. How's that?
Aaron, are you in some kind of a bind? Hey, talk to me. If you need money.
If I need money, I'll go to a bank, okay? Where my word's still good.
It's starting to get a little over emotional here.
What is going on with you?
A little montage of training in football. Flex his muscles in the mirror.
Aaron, you gotta chill out, man. You're gonna tear and burn.
Man, all right? Don't tell me what to do.
Excuse me. So I just
Flashing out at his
forgot that
friends.
you're the man, right? So I just forgot that you're the man. This will take the edge off broken glass.
Great. Toss them over.
If you want it, you gotta pay for it.
All right. I'm a little short today. I can probably pay next week or...
I'll front you this time. From now on, you pay as you go.
Too bad. What, you think I need steroids to kick your fucking ass?
You know, I know you need steroids to kick my ass.
Let's go, come on.
Now he's beating up a guy that he played football against. This is the roid rage here. So in this scene, his girlfriend there, whoops, his girlfriend caught him using steroids and saying she's gonna tell on him, or he needs to, and then he proceeds to, where are we? Proceeds to beat the absolute shit out of her. And him grabbing his shoulder like that, it also highlights that they talk about how steroids are bad for your joints and your tendons and your ligaments. That was highlighted in this scene just to show that. But he's like, if you're not watching, he's dumping bottles of steroids and I guess either some muscle relaxer or something that he was using to take the edge off into his mouth, and he is destroying a room after beating the crap out of his girlfriend, after beating the crap out of a guy who played football against him. And he's just destroying everything. And that's basically how it ends. Now, that after-school special was like 45 minutes long. I took a couple clips from it. Basically, his coach tells him he has to get bigger, so he finds a guy at the gym and gets steroids from him. The steroids aren't working fast enough, so he goes and gets more, so now he's taking multiple steroids. Gets too kind of crazy on him, so he needs something to take the edge off, which I would imagine is a muscle relaxer or a painkiller of some kind. Then, steals money from his mom. So it shows steroids are like a gateway drug, right? Because now he needs other stuff. He doesn't just need the steroid. He needs other steroids, and he needs something to take the edge off. He's stealing money from his mother to be able to afford his habit. This sounds like crack or heroin or something to that effect. And then he has the roid rage. He's got the bad joints, and he hurts the people he cares about. That's what steroids have always been kind of taught to all of us that they are, and that after school special did a lot of damage. And my 20 years of, man, it might even be more than that now, being a gym rat and then being a strength and conditioning coach, I have never known one steroid user to act like that. It's hyperbole. It's kind of like it's akin to reefer madness, right? If you ever go back and watch that, that's not what happens when you take steroids. They just try to make it look as bad as possible, and showing kind of preying on parents' fears that could be your kid, right? And that's what that bill did. And then it made criminals of athletes. It made criminals of strength and conditioning coaches and athletic trainers and doctors. And it made criminals of high school kids who were taking steroids, who shouldn't be taking steroids for a plethora of reasons. But it's really crazy because we had a sports cheating issue that we banned steroids and made criminals of just people looking to get stronger in the gym. It's nuts. So that was 1994, right? 1990 was the original bill. 1994 was that stupid after-school special. And then 10 years later, the after-school special really doesn't have anything to do with the timeline here. But 10 years later, in 2004, not to be outdone by his father, George W. Bush signed the Anabolic Steroid Control Act of 2004. And what that did was it kind of expanded upon what was set forth in 1990. It just added some what used to be called pro steroids, which you might think of today as like designer steroids. Some other pro hormones. The pro steroids would have been like methyl-1 testosterone, Haladrol, things like that were sold over the counter. And it even outlawed corticosteroids without having which to be completely honest, I kind of agree with that one. Corticosteroids can be very dangerous when abused, even though like they can help. They can also be awful for you. So that probably should have been something that was done a long time ago. Now, what was this in response to, right? Why did George Bush feel compelled to pass that bill or pass that law and sign it into law? Well, had to do with Victor Conti and a company called Balco Labs. Balco Labs and Victor Conti, they were the original creators of what used to be called ZMA, which is like a zinc magnesium aspartate. It was supposed to help testosterone or increase testosterone levels, and it was meant to help you sleep better. It was a very popular drug. Believe it or not, George Bush, when he was one of the owners of the Texas Rangers, had a contract with Balco, and they would consistently order supplements for the team. It's kind of funny. But Victor Conti was the CEO and the owner of Balco. He was also the saxophonist for Tower of Power way back in the day. And the reason that Balco got found out was because some overzealous IRS agent saw Victor Conti driving too nice of a car and decided he was going to go dumpster diving and came across their books. Now, when he was going across these books, he found all the athletes that Balco Labs was doing business with. And this led to a bunch of people, again, being paraded up on Capitol Hill from Barry Bonds to Marion Jones. There's Raphael. Oh God, what was his last name? A baseball player. Ton of baseball players, ton of football players, all kind of caught up in this. And what Balco did was they created these two undetectable steroids called the Cream and the Clear. Now, the Cream was just like a regular kind of testosterone-based supplement. It was transdermal, so it was a lotion you put on your skin. And then the Clear was something that you would take orally, and it was what was called THG, tetrahydra something or other. I can't remember off the top of my head. But that was really what kind of helped. The Cream kind of was just like the icing on the cake. So you had all these athletes taking these designer steroids, winning gold medals, signing, multi-million-dollar contracts. And Congress did not like that. So what did they do? They once again paraded all these athletes onto Capitol Hill and decided to have the inquisition as to whether or not you use these steroids. And it got really stupid. But I've got right here. This is from our fearless leader Joe Biden on these hearings on Capitol Hill. I'm going to play that now. It's about 3 minutes long. But side note here, watch this, listen to him, and then tell me that he hasn't lost a step or two today. Here we go. Boom. Play it.
We make the case, and I made the case in 90, this was a health issue. But you know what, John? I realize it's not a health issue alone. This is a values issue. This is a values issue. My friends in baseball, I usually side with the union because Mr. Selick I love, but I wish the hell he'd get a real commissioner. And I have real disagreements with you all, and I have real disagreements about how, but the union's wrong here. They're wrong here. Baseball is a national pastime, but it is the repository of the values of this country. When we want to define to a foreign country what we're about, and you're going to show a film, what would you go show? You'd show the basketball film, The Hoosiers, or you'd show, The Natural, or you'd show something that reflects what every American feels in their gut, their being, every fiber of them, that this is the ultimate meritocracy, the United States of America. Winston Churchill said that England's future was determined more in the playing fields of Eton than it was at any academy. And there's truth to that, Mr. Chairman. You know it. I know you well. I know you well. And this wells up from the tip of your toes right to the base of your brain. And all of you know it. There's something simply un-American about this. This is about values. It's about our culture. It's about who we define ourselves to be. And lastly, I must tell you, I thought in undergraduate school and in college I was a pretty good athlete. But you know what? I think to myself as a small kid, I was light at the time, and I was pretty good. And I now find myself not only as a senator resentful of what some athletes are doing to the sport, but I find myself angry in my gut. Because these are the same guys who would have taken me out.
So first off, LOL at Joe Biden thinking he could have played Major League Baseball, but you can see even back then he had a mouth on him. He had to stop himself from calling them bastards.
Taking me out, not because they had more God-given natural talent than me, but because they enhanced with artificial means their capacity. That is simply wrong. That is a blot on the culture of this country. And you know all the statistics on health, John.
All right. So, nonsense, right? It's crazy to watch. That's the kind of stuff that Congress does when they call these hearings up on Capitol Hill. They're trying to get sound bites to basically dig into parents and have them be scared that their kids are going to become the next steroid user and they're going to be Ben Affleck or, God, what was his name, man? Chris Benoit, right? The WWE guy that, kind of took out his whole family. They blamed steroids for it when the reality of it was he was on so many other drugs. But that they're preying on the fears of parents. And not that kids should be taking steroids. They should not. There are many, many reasons for it. But to criminalize professional athletes who want to gain an edge on the field because Carl Lewis lost to Ben Johnson in 1988 is wild to me, and that's exactly what happened. So that's kind of the story. That's how Carl Lewis kind of created an environment where it's hard for you're not going to have anything other than mediocre gym gains if you don't figure out your diet, your nutrition, your proper training program, because you can't access steroids because Congress decided that they were going to criminalize steroids after Carl Lewis lost to Ben Johnson in a 100-meter dash in 1988 in Seoul Olympics. And that drug test may have been tainted with, right? There's a whole other conspiracy theory rabbit hole you can go down there with the American government wanting to feminize men. So they conjured up this scheme to make it look like the American lost so that Americans would be on board with banning steroids and testosterone. And then slowly, what's funny is since then, our fertility rates have been destroyed. They're trending towards zero right now, and your average 20-year-old has the same testosterone levels that a 70-year-old had in 1990 when this stupid bill was passed. So, rabbit hole there. Have fun. But that's going to be it for today. This one was a little bit longer. There's a lot more kind of involved in it. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. We're going to try to do some more of these types of episodes as well, in addition to the ones that get pretty dry where I'm just talking about stuff. But again, hopefully you enjoyed the story. Get out there, buy the Dynamic Effort Method for Athletes, buy Simple Strength, get on the website. We got a couple courses that are going to be dropping. The Total Hockey Training book should be available next month. I got like maybe another 50 pages to write, and it's got to be edited and all that. But that should be ready to go pretty soon. Yeah, just keep an eye out for more episodes. Go ahead and like, subscribe, share, do all that stuff. Go give us like a like and a follow on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts from. Follow the social medias, do all the things, and we will see you next time.
I don't want to hear you, 'cause you cannot master the